Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music and the second half of Playlist 11. This episode might be my favourite yet. Coming up, we've got great tunes, conspiracy, backstabbing, post-punk, Diana Ross going big, one of the greatest soul songs ever, and we're ending on a bit of school disco magic. As usual, a quick reminder that as we can't play the songs in the podcast due to strict copyright laws, you'll find the links to the playlist for both Spotify and Apple Music in the episode description, plus the full song listings. And as always, if you'd like to write into the show with any memories, corrections, or fun facts, you can find me on most social media platforms as the 80s Mixtaper, or just email to completed80s@aol.com. Now let's get back to the music. Alright, picture it, summer 1980, the first summer of a new decade, a fresh era of pop music on the rise. Among the neon tides of synth-heavy hits and ambitious chart climbers, a 21-year-old Scottish singer named Sheena Easton, who we met in episode 8, emerges with a song so bubbly, so relentlessly cheerful, that it almost seems engineered in a secret pop laboratory to dominate both sides of the Atlantic. The track, Morning Train, or 9 to 5 as it's also known. A song about as deceptively simple as a love note left in a lunchbox. But simplicity in this case was Easton's ticket to global breakthrough, and we're going to talk about why. This is track 8, Playlist 11. The song, penned by Florrie Palmer, could be called an ode to routine, or at least a rose-coloured one. It's told from the perspective of a woman waiting for her man to return from work day after day. There's a deep, almost sitcom-level satisfaction in the lyrics. My baby takes the morning train, he works from 9 to 5, and then he takes another home again to find me waiting for him. There's no hint of monotony, no grievance with the grind, just pure devotion and anticipation. But here's the thing, in an era where disco was waning and new wave was ascending, this song leaned into traditional pop sensibilities. It was bright, melodic, and ridiculously easy to sing along to. That accessibility is the key. Now, we've already talked about Easton's biography, but the Cliff Notes version is this. The rise of Sheena Easton was anything but conventional. She wasn't discovered playing in a dingy Glasgow pub or gigging on the London circuit. Her story unfolds on national television. The BBC documentary series The Big Time Pop Singer chronicled her attempt to break into the music business, airing her journey to a national audience in 1980. It was essentially a proto-X Factor moment decades before Simon Cowell would smirk his way into our lives. That exposure worked, and her first single, Modern Girl, became a UK top 10 in early 1980. Then came 9 to 5, released later that year. Bolstered by her BBC Field momentum, 9 to 5 hit number 3 on the UK singles chart. By the time she landed on US soil, Easton was already an international name in the making. But there was a hitch. Dolly Parton, already a superstar by then, had her own massive hit called 9 to 5 in the same era. To avoid confusion, Easton's track was retitled Morning Train 9 to 5 for its US release in 1981. Whatever worries the label might have had about market competition were unfounded though. Americans fell for Easton's charm, hook, line and sinker. The song didn't just chart, it conquered. It reached number 1 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and held the spot for 2 weeks in May 1981. It was also a chart topper in Canada, New Zealand and Australia. And let's not forget the adult contemporary charts, where it lingered with equal enthusiasm. The question is, why did Morning Train resonate so broadly? Well, first, it's practically a masterclass in earworm creation. The melody is instantly memorable, with a bounce that's impossible to ignore. Florrie Palmer's lyrics may have been simple, but they were relatable, offering an idealised vision of love and devotion that anyone could grasp. And then there's Easton herself. Her image, sweet, youthful and fresh-faced, was in stark contrast to the edgier acts that dominated the late 70s and early 80s. There was nothing cynical about her. She embodied sincerity. For a world still catching its breath after the punk revolution and disco's excesses, Easton felt like a refreshing reset. Let's not overlook timing as well. MTV launched in 1981, just as Easton's career was exploding. The music video for Morning Train, filmed on England's Bluebell Railway, became an early staple of the channel. It was quaint and cheerful, with Easton playing the dutiful smitten partner. In hindsight, it might feel like a caricature, but in 1981, it was visual candy for an audience acclimating to the idea of music videos as an art form. Morning Train was the start of a career that spanned for decades, and Easton went on to win a Grammy for Best New Artist in 1982, record the James Bond theme for Your Eyes Only, and even collaborate with Prince on tracks like You Got the Look, which we will come to. But the shadow of Morning Train has always loomed large in her discography. For better or for worse, the song became a shorthand for Easton's image, and there's a fascinating juxtaposition between the themes of Morning Train and Modern Girl, and it speaks to the versatility and perhaps calculated duality of Sheena Easton's early image. Where Morning Train presents a portrait of romantic devotion and traditional domesticity, Modern Girl is a declaration of independence and autonomy. It's like two sides of the same coin, embodying different archetypes of femininity that resonated with audience in the transitional era of the 1980s. In Morning Train, Easton sings about a life revolving around her partner's work schedule. It's unabashedly about a woman whose day hinges on her romantic relationship. This vision of devotion and independence harks back to the ideals of the 1950s housewife. And in 1980, it would have appealed to listeners who found comfort in this more traditional view of gender roles. The song's sugary, upbeat tone makes it feel like a love letter set to music, idealised and straightforward. It's about waiting, loving and finding fulfilment in the rhythm of partnership. The domesticity is so exaggerated that it almost feels performative, leaning into its romanticised narrative without a hint of irony. Contrast that with Modern Girl, where the protagonist is a self-assured woman navigating her own life on her own terms. From the opening lines, there's a confident, no-nonsense energy. She don't build her world around no single man, but she's getting by, doing what she can. She is free to be what she wants to be, and all she wants to be is a modern girl. The song celebrates a woman who prioritises herself over societal expectations of relationships. She's career-focused, busy, and unapologetically single, getting her own coffee in the morning, walking confidently through the city streets. The Modern Girl persona feels like an early-age pop feminist anthem, reflecting the shifting dynamics of gender roles in the late 20th century. Women were entering the workplace in record numbers, asserting their independence, and questioning the traditional expectations of marriage and domesticity. The juxtaposition of these two hits is striking, especially since they were released so close together and shared chart success simultaneously. On one hand, it might seem contradictory. Is Sheena Easton a modern independent woman, or is she a devoted partner waiting for a man to come home? The answer is, of course, both, and that duality is part of the magic. Pop stars, especially in the pre-Madonna era, were often encouraged to appeal to a broad spectrum of listeners. Easton's team may have recognised the value in crafting a multifaceted image, one that could resonate with women who saw themselves as strong and independent, Modern Girl, while still appealing to those who found comfort in romantic ideals, Morning Train. It's a canny balancing act, allowing her to bridge generational and ideological divides. It's also worth noting the cultural context of the early 1980s. Women's roles were rapidly evolving, but traditional ideals still held significant sway. Modern Girl reflects the rise of the working woman, inspired by second-wave feminism and an era of increased independence. Meanwhile, Morning Train taps into nostalgia for simpler, more clearly defined roles, especially in a time of societal upheaval. This duality made Easton a relatable figure for a wide audience. Whether you identified with the woman hustling through her life in her own terms, or one waiting at home with love and devotion, there was a Sheena song for you. The contrast between Morning Train and Modern Girl has become a fascinating footnote in Easton's career. It shows you how pop music in the 1980s often straddled the line between progressivism and traditionalism, capturing the complexities of societal change. While one song might feel dated today, the other still stands as a feminist anthem, and together they reflect the shifting expectations of women's roles in that era. In many ways, Sheena Easton's early work holds up as a snapshot of what it meant to navigate identity as a woman in the 1980s, both in love and in life, torn between independence and intimacy, and ultimately making room for both. Next on this podcast, a great song. In fact, not just a great song, one of the greatest songs of not just 1980, but the 80s. When Diana Ross redefined herself yet again with her colossal hit, Upside Down. This song is incredible, a masterclass in collaboration, and a moment where disco, funk and pop aligned in perfect harmony. This is our track 9. Give it a listen now. By the late 1970s, Diana Ross was already a global superstar. Her time with the Supremes cemented her as a Motown legend, and her solo career produced hits like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Love Hangover. We last met Diana Ross all the way back in episode 2. December the 31st, 1979, with the homely ballad It's My House. But with tastes shifting, she needed a new sound. That's where Nile, Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chic came in. Known for their pioneering work on hits like Le Freak and Good Times, Rodgers and Edwards were pioneers of disco and funk, crafting grooves that filled dance floors worldwide. Their partnership with Ross marked a turning point. Upside Down, written and produced by the duo, combined Chic's rhythmic sophistication with Ross's signature vocal delivery. The result was electric. Nile Rodgers once described the process. We wanted to make something that felt timeless, but still Diana. Something that could stand next to her earlier hits, but sound like the future. Upside Down was released on June the 18th, 1980, as the lead single from Ross's album Diana. Within weeks, it climbed to the top of the Billboard Hot 100, where it stayed for 4 weeks. It also dominated the R&B and dance club charts, a rare Triple Crown achievement that highlighted its cross-genre appeal. Internationally, the song proved equally successful. In the UK, it reached number 2 on the singles chart and was certified silver for sales, exceeding 250,000 copies. Across Europe and beyond, it topped charts in countries like Italy, Norway and Switzerland. By the end of the year, Upside Down was a global smash. So what made Upside Down resonate so deeply? Well, for starters, the production was groundbreaking. Rodgers and Edwards pushed the boundaries of what funk could be, blending syncopated bass lines with an infectious danceable groove. The song's structure was deceptively simple, yet packed with subtle complexities, from the layered instrumentation to the way Ross's vocals played off the rhythm. Then there were the lyrics. Upside down, you're turning me. You're giving me love instinctively is an iconic opening line, capturing the emotional whirlwind of a relationship. Ross sings with a mix of vulnerability and strength, making the song both personal and universal. The album itself also broke new ground. Ross famously remixed it with producer Russ Tarana after initially feeling it didn't align with her vision. The Chic mix was raw and edgy, but Ross opted for a smoother finish. The resulting balance between Chic's funk influence and Ross's classic style gave the song its unique flavour. When we look at the difference between Ross's previous album, The Boss, in 1979 and Diana in 1980, there's a clear evolution too. The shift between The Boss and Diana was both artistic and strategic, reflecting Diana Ross's desire to modernise her sound, adapting to changing musical trends and assert greater control over her career. Let's break down what happened and how it played out. The Boss was written and produced by Ashford and Simpson, a powerhouse songwriting duo who had worked with Ross on earlier successes like Ain't No Mountain High Enough. The album was steeped in disco and soul, showcasing their lush, dramatic production style. The album was well received, producing hits like The Boss and It's My House. However, it was clear that disco's dominance was waning as the genre faced backlash in the US. Ross was still popular, but she needed a sound that could transcend the confines of the disco era and feel more contemporary. Recognising the need for reinvention, Ross and Motown turned to Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chic. They were among the most innovative producers in music at the time, blending funk, disco and pop with sharp, modern production techniques. Their hits like Good Times and Le Freak had set the tone for late-era disco, and their influence promised to give Ross a cutting-edge sound. Unlike The Boss, which leaned on Ross's traditional soulful delivery, Diana emphasised funk-driven grooves, sparse instrumentation, and a rhythmic, almost minimalist aesthetic. Tracks like Upside Down and I'm Coming Out, which we will see, epitomised this fresh, danceable approach. Diana became Ross's most successful studio album. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 10 million copies worldwide. The album's sound bridged the gap between disco and the emerging styles of post-disco, funk and pop, ensuring Ross's relevance in a rapidly changing musical landscape over the next decade. The transition from The Boss to Diana marked a turning point for Ross. It cemented her ability to evolve and adapt, proving she could stay ahead of trends rather than following them. It set the stage for her continued success in the 80s, with subsequent albums exploring pop, R&B, and adult contemporary sounds. Diana remains a high point in her discography, representing not only a sonic reinvention, but also Ross's growing role as an artist who could shape her own destiny. Upside Down remains one of Diana Ross's most celebrated hits. It earned her a Grammy nomination for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance and solidified her status as a pop icon in the post-disco era. Over the years, the song has been covered, sampled and celebrated by artists across genres. Salt and Pepper famously included their take on the track in the 1996 Space Jam soundtrack. DJs frequently include it in their dance sets, and its bass line continues to inspire modern producers. Culturally, Upside Down has transcended its era. In 2013, it was featured in a quirky Mercedes-Benz commercial, introducing it to a new generation. The ad, showcasing chickens moving in sync to the beat, was a viral hit, proving the timeless appeal of both the song and its groove. At its core, Upside Down is more than a disco hit. It's a testament to artistic reinvention. Ross took a risk by partnering with Chic, stepping outside her comfort zone to embrace a new sound. The gamble paid off, producing a track that feels as fresh today as it did in 1980. Whether you're hearing it for the first time or the 100th, Upside Down remains a dance floor anthem and a reminder of Ross's unparalleled ability to evolve with the times while staying true to her essence. And that's what makes it a top-tier Pantheon entry. Next up, we're back following the exploits of a certain former Sex Pistol manager, Malcolm McLaren. The Pistols may have been long over, but that didn't mean that McLaren wasn't wheeling and dealing in the background, this time with yet another power play. He's bending the music rules again. It wasn't just a song, it was a manifesto, a statement, and a controversy all rolled into a bouncy 3-minute package. This is C30, C60, C90 Go by Bow Wow Wow and our track 10. To understand the band, you have to understand Malcolm McLaren, the impresario, provocateur and puppet master of punk. After managing the Sex Pistols into chaos, McLaren had a new vision, a band that combined the energy of punk with something fresher, wilder, more rhythmic. He set his sights on one of the biggest bands who we have yet to meet, but who at this point were nothing more than fresh-faced minnows. That band, ladies and gentlemen, was Adam and the Ants. The connection came about because McLaren, always on the lookout for the next big thing, was intrigued by the burgeoning post-punk scene and saw potential in Adam and the Ants' theatrical and rebellious approach. Adam Ant was reportedly keen to work with McLaren, who by then was a controversial but influential figure in the music industry. McLaren's reputation as an architect for the Sex Pistols' anarchic success made him a sought-after figure for bands looking to make a splash. Adam Ant reached out to McLaren, hoping to tap into his expertise in marketing and image crafting. McLaren agreed to manage the band, seeing an opportunity to mould their sound and aesthetic into something that aligned with his own vision. Once he stepped into the managerial role, McLaren began imposing his ideas almost immediately. He was captivated by the concept of tribal rhythms, particularly the Burundi beat, which he had encountered on a recording by the Royal Drummers of Burundi. He wanted to integrate these polyrhythms into the band's music, believing it would set them apart from the rest of the post-punk scene. While Adamant was open to innovation, McLaren's domineering approach quickly caused friction. McLaren seemed less interested in helping Adamant realise his artistic vision and more focused on reshaping the band entirely to suit his own ambitions. This creative tug-of-war became a major source of tension. Within a few months of working with the band, McLaren orchestrated a coup. He convinced drummer Dave Barbarossa, guitarist Matthew Ashman, and bassist Lee Gorman to abandon Adamant and form a new band under his leadership. McLaren pitched the idea of Bow Wow Wow as a fresh start, one that would fuse punk energy with global musical influences. The trio, likely lured by McLaren's charisma and promises of greater success, agreed to the split. For Adamant, the split was nothing short of betrayal. McLaren effectively dismantled the lineup he had worked hard to assemble. Adamant later described McLaren's actions as manipulative and underhanded. He was left scrambling to rebuild his band, which he eventually did with a new lineup. Ironically, this led to Adam and the Ants' meteoric rise to fame with albums like Kings of the Wild Frontier and hits like Ant Music and Prince Charming. But all in good time, my friends, all in good time. The relationship between Adamant and his former bandmates soured, particularly because they had left without much warning. McLaren's interference made the split even messier. In hindsight, though, it's clear that both Adamant and Bow Wow Wow benefited creatively from the separation, but the process was painful and personal at the time. McLaren's reputation as a provocateur played a significant role in how this unfolded. He didn't just want to manage bands, he wanted to create them, to shape them into extensions of his own artistic vision. With Bow Wow Wow, he got the chance to start from scratch and built a group that embodied his fascination with rebellion, youth culture, and global influences. While this vision brought success and innovation, it left a tale of fractured relationships in its wake. For Adamant, the split forced him to reinvent himself, and he emerged stronger as a result. For Bow Wow Wow, the move gave them a fresh start and an identity that was uniquely theirs, albeit one still very much influenced by McLaren's direction. For the vocalist, McLaren took a risk. Annabella Lewin was only 13 years old when McLaren heard her singing at a dry cleaner's shop. Her youthful energy, charisma and raw vocal talent were exactly what McLaren needed to front his new experiment. Bow Wow Wow was born and they hit the ground running. The band's sound was unlike anything else in 1980, built on tribal rhythms, West African-inspired beats, punk attitude, and a dash of cheeky pop. They felt both anarchic and danceable, a rare combination. They had the vibe of a pirate radio station that had come to life, storming the airways with joyful chaos. Enter their debut single, C30, C60, C90 Go. Released in July 1980, this tune was a statement about the changing way people consume music. Home taping, the act of recording music from the radio or copying tapes, was exploding in popularity. The music industry hated it, launching campaigns declaring home taping is killing music. Bow Wow Wow naturally saw this as an opportunity. The lyrics were a cheeky celebration of this DIY ethos. C30, C60, C90 Go. Off the radio, I get a constant flow. Hit it, pause it, record and play. Turn it, rewind, and rub it away. It wasn't subtle, but that was the point. Bow Wow Wow were thumbing their noses at the industry, and their manager, McLaren, had the audacity to make their debut single the world's first ever cassette-only release. To make the statement even louder, the B-side of the cassette was left blank, encouraging fans to use it for their own recordings. I mean, the guy is an evil genius. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, the single found its audience. It reached number 34 on the UK singles chart and played in the top 75 for 7 weeks. Not bad for a song that major record labels initially hesitated to support. The track's success proved that Bow Wow Wow had the musical chops and cultural relevance to make an impact. The song's jittery guitar riffs, relentless percussion, and Annabella Lwin's breathless delivery were impossible to ignore. It felt like a party, an insurrection, and a schoolyard chant all rolled into one. If punk was about rebellion, C30, C60, C90 Go expanded that rebellion into the realm of how music was shared and experienced. Of course, Bow Wow Wow wasn't content to simply provoke the music industry. Their entire aesthetic and marketing shaped by McLaren was designed to shock. Lwin's age became a focal point of controversy, particularly when McLaren featured her nude on the cover of the band's mini-album, Your Cassette Pet. While the image was inspired by classical art, it sparked debates about exploitation and boundaries in music promotion. Yet the band persisted. They released a string of hits which we shall see, including Go Wild in the Country and their most enduring single, I Want Candy, which became a staple of 80s pop culture. Their sound evolved, incorporating more polished production, but they never lost the mischievous energy that defined them. Looking back, C30, C60, C90 Go feels prophetic. In the 1980s, it was about cassette tapes and home taping, but its spirit is alive today in playlists, streaming, and the way we curate and share music online. The idea that fans could take control of their music experience, recording, sharing, remixing, was radical then. Now it's the norm, but it's more legitimised, well, slightly. Bow Wow Wow's music also paved the way for genres that involve rhythm as much as melody. Their fusion of punk and tribal beats influenced everyone from post-punk bands like Talking Heads to modern indie acts that blend world music with pop. And let's not forget Annabella Lwin, whose presence as a teenage frontwoman in a male-dominated industry opened doors for other young women in music. Her unapologetic energy and charisma made her a style icon and a trailblazer. C30, C60, C90 Go was a grenade tossed into the music industry's ivory tower. It challenged how music was consumed, celebrated the DIY spirit, and refused to play by the rules. In doing so, it cemented Bow Wow Wow's place in music history as innovators and provocateurs. Track 11 today is yet another example of the incestuous relationship between bands. This time, it's the turn of the Buzzcocks and Susie and the Banshees as the entry and exit points. We're talking about Magazine, the post-punk visionaries who carved out a sound that was as sharp as shattered glass and as delicate as falling snowflakes. Specifically, we're zeroing in on their 1980 single, Sweetheart Contract. Sweetheart Contract is a track that embodies both the band's knack for unsettling beauty and their tragically underappreciated legacy. But to understand the brilliance of Sweetheart Contract, we need to trace the band's trajectory, how they emerged, evolved, and cemented themselves in the annals of post-punk. The story begins with Howard Devoto. If punk rock was the fire of rebellion, Devoto was the man who asked what came next once the smoke cleared. In early 1977, Devoto was still riding high on the success of co-founding the Buzzcocks. Their Spiral Scratch EP is a seminal artifact of punk's DIY ethos. But even as the ink dried on the release, Devoto grew restless. He famously quipped that punk was boring and left the Buzzcocks, turning his attention to creating something new, something that could match his ambition for avant-garde exploration. By the end of 1977, Devoto had assembled Magazine. The original lineup included guitarist John McGeoch, keyboardist Bob Dickinson briefly, bassist Barry Adamson, and drummer Martin Jackson. Their collective mission was clear: to transcend punk's raw simplicity and create something more cerebral and sonically adventurous. With their 1978 debut album, Real Life, Magazine immediately set themselves apart from their contemporaries. Songs like Shot by Both Sides combined Devoto's existential, often cryptic lyrics and McGeoch's groundbreaking guitar textures, earning the band critical acclaim and a cult following. Magazine followed up with Second-Hand Daylight in 1979, a denser, moodier album that pushed their experimental tendencies further. Though it didn't achieve the same level of success as their debut, it showcased their range and dedication to musical risk-taking. By the time they started work on their third album, The Correct Use of Soap, the band had fine-tuned their sound, striking a balance between art rock complexity and melodic accessibility. Released as a single in 1980, Sweetheart Contract exemplifies this balance perfectly. The song is an intricate blend of biting wit, shimmering keyboards, and McGeoch's singular guitar work, all anchored by Devoto's sardonic delivery. The lyrics, as with much of Magazine's work, invite interpretation. I want myself a wealth of weapons, supermassive wealth, under a sweetheart contract which clearly stated, strength is always health. I had the upper hand. I was dominant for hours. Musically, the track feels like a battle between tension and resolution. Barry Adamson's bass line throbs with urgency, while Dave Formula's keyboards add a veneer of icy detachment. McGeoch's guitar, as always, is the secret weapon. His playing here is less about traditional riffs and more about sculpting atmosphere, carving out negative space with harmonics and shimmering chords. Despite the artistry, Sweetheart Contract peaked at a modest number 54 on the UK singles chart. It wasn't a massive commercial hit, but much like Magazine's work, its influence far outweighed its chart performance. The early 1980s saw Magazine slowly unravel. McGeoch departed not long after the release of The Correct Use of Soap to join Susie and the Banshees, where he further cemented his reputation as one of the most innovative guitar players of his generation. Magazine soldiered on briefly, releasing The Uneven Magic, Murder and Weather in 1981 before calling it quits. In the years since, Magazine's reputation has only grown. Bands like Radiohead, Morrissey and Joy Division have cited them as a key influence, particularly in how they blended intellectualism with emotional intensity. John McGeoch, who tragically passed away in 2004, is now widely regarded as one of the most influential guitarists in modern rock history. Barry Adamson went on to a successful solo career, composing soundtracks and collaborating with acts like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Sweetheart Contract may have not been the biggest hit, but it captures everything that made the band special. It's complex without being pretentious, catchy without being disposable, and thought-provoking without ever sacrificing its visceral impact. So why revisit a song like Sweetheart Contract in 2025? Because it reminds us of a time when bands weren't afraid to take risks, to alienate the mainstream in pursuit of something unique. And Magazine's sound has aged remarkably well, not because it's nostalgic, but because it feels as fresh and challenging now as it did in 1980. For those who have never heard Magazine, let Sweetheart Contract be your gateway drug. Listen closely to Devoto's lyrics, to McGeoch's guitar, and to the interplay between every instrument. It's a song that demands your full attention, and if you give it that, it'll reward you with layers of meaning and emotion. Our penultimate track on Playlist 11 is by one of the heavyweights of soul and R&B, George Benson. We're talking about his iconic single, Give Me the Night, released in 1980. A track that not only defined an era, but has continued to reverberate through the decades. So sit back, relax, and let's journey through the life and legacy of George Benson and this unforgettable song. This is our track 12. George Benson, born on March the 22nd, 1943 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. From an early age, he exhibited prodigious musical talent, picking up the guitar at the tender age of 8. By 10, he was already recording, and by 21, he had signed with Columbia Records, releasing his debut album, The New Boss Guitar of George Benson, in 1964. Benson's early work was steeped in the rich traditions of jazz, collaborating with giants like Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard, and Herbie Hancock. However, it was in the late 70s that Benson truly found his voice, shifting towards a more pop-oriented sound without ever losing his jazz sensibilities. This transition was crystallized in his 1976 album, Breezin', which featured the Grammy-winning hit This Masquerade. Benson's velvety voice and impeccable guitar work made him a household name, and he continued to build on this success with subsequent albums. Now, let's fast forward to 1980, a pivotal year in Benson's career. Give Me the Night was released during this time, and it was more than just a song. It was a collaboration of legends. Produced by Quincy Jones, this track was written by the prolific Rod Temperton, the genius behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, which we'll definitely see on this podcast. The song's lush arrangement and infectious groove were complemented by Benson's silky vocals and impeccable guitar work. Give Me the Night was an instant hit. It reached number 4 on the UK singles chart and dominated the US Billboard Hot 100, also peaking at number 4. The song also topped the Billboard R&B chart and won Benson a Grammy Award for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance in 1981. The track's success was bolstered by a slick music video that featured Benson cruising through a neon-lit cityscape, capturing the essence of the 80s nightlife. Lyrically, Give Me the Night encapsulates the joy and freedom of a nocturnal adventure. Benson croons, "Whenever dark has fallen, you know the spirit of the party starts to come alive. Until the day is dawning, you can throw out all the blues and hit the city lights." The song invites listeners to embrace the magic of the night. The lyrics are simple but profound, capturing the essence of escapism and the allure of the after hours. The production on Give Me the Night is also a masterclass in 1980s R&B. Quincy Jones' genius touch is evident in the lush orchestration, the tight rhythm section, and the seamless blend of jazz, funk, and pop elements. The track features a stellar lineup of musicians, including legendary bassist Louis Johnson, drummer John Robinson, and keyboardist Greg Philinganis. Their contributions give the song its distinctive groove and polish. The legacy of Give Me the Night is immense. It marked a high point in Benson's career, solidifying his status as a crossover artist who could effortlessly straddle the worlds of jazz and pop. The track has been covered and sampled by numerous artists over the years, a testament to its enduring appeal. Benson himself has continued to perform this song in his live shows, and it remains a crowd favourite. Moreover, Give Me the Night played a significant role in shaping the sound of 1980s R&B. Its blend of sophisticated production, catchy melodies, and soulful delivery set the stage for many of the artists who followed. The song's influence can be heard in the work of contemporary musicians who continue to draw inspiration from its timeless groove and infectious energy. In conclusion, George Benson's Give Me the Night has more than stood the test of time. One of the things I found when listening to every single of the 1980s is that there is a lot of very generic soul and R&B. Give Me the Night demonstrates that when soul and R&B is done well, it can be legendary. And for that reason, George Benson enters the upper echelons of our 80s pantheon. And for our final track today, we are back at the school disco. Whether you were a 7-year-old up in Wigan or a teeny bopper in Romford, this was another staple of birthdays and other parties. Kelly Marie's 1980 chart topper, Feels Like I'm in Love. This infectious tune didn't just top the charts, it became a defining anthem of its time, leaving an indelible mark on the disco landscape and in the scuff marks in school halls. This is our track 13. Born Jacqueline McKinnon on August the 16th, 1957 in Paisley, Scotland, Kelly Marie's journey to disco stardom was not particularly conventional. From a young age, she was destined for the spotlight. By 12, she was already showcasing her vocal talents in local singing competitions. And at 16, under the moniker Kelly Brown, she graced the stage of the television talent show Opportunity Knocks, winning audiences over with her rendition of I Don't Know How to Love Him and securing victory 4 times. This early exposure led to a contract with Pi Records. In April 1976, she released her debut single, Who's That Lady With My Man, which soared to number 5 in France, earning a gold disc with over 300,000 copies sold. Subsequent releases like Help Me and Run To Me found more moderate success in European markets, but the UK charts remained elusive. The origins of Feels Like I'm in Love are as intriguing as the song itself. Penned by Ray Dorset of Mungo Jerry fame, the track was initially intended for Elvis Presley of all people. However, with Presley's untimely death in 1977, the song found its way to Kelly Marie. Marie discovered the song in a music publishing office and, recognising its potential, recorded it in 1979. Initially, it made waves in Scottish clubs before exploding onto the national scene. By September 1980, Feels Like I'm in Love had ascended to the pinnacle of the UK singles chart, where it reigned for 2 weeks. Musically, the song is a quintessential disco track, performed in the key of C major with a tempo of 121 beats per minute. Its upbeat rhythm and catchy melody made it a favourite among dancers and DJs alike. The song's success wasn't confined to the UK, it resonated with international audiences, charting impressively across the globe. For example, Australia it peaked at number 7, in Denmark it claimed the number 1 spot, and in South Africa it also reached number 7. In the United States, it secured the number 10 position on the Billboard Hot Dance Club Play chart in 1981. Despite the monumental success of Feels Like I'm in Love, Kelly Marie struggled to replicate its chart-topping performance. Subsequent UK releases like Loving Just for Fun and Hot Love charted at number 21 and number 22 respectively, signalling a decline in mainstream popularity. In the years that followed, Marie continued to record dance tracks, maintaining a presence on the international club scene. She took a hiatus in 1984 to focus on her family, eventually becoming a mother to 5 daughters and 1 son. The enduring appeal of Feels Like I'm in Love led to several re-releases and remixes, including a 1990 version by PWL and a 1997 re-recording by Marie herself. Feels Like I'm in Love is disco cheese at its finest, with those little punctuations before the key line of Feels Like I'm in Love, which every kid loved to sing, and to her credit, my wife did. When in researching this song, I played the track very briefly, and she did the little keyboard punctuations while scrolling on her phone. Its infectious rhythm and jubilant melody continue to inspire dance floors worldwide. While Kelly Marie may not have sustained prolonged chart success, her contribution to the disco era remains undeniable, encapsulated in a track that still makes us want to dance. As we wrap up this episode, we'd love to hear your recollections of the songs featured today and other memorable encounters, whether it be at gigs or on the dance floor. Share your stories with us by emailing completed80s@aol.com or by finding me on X or Instagram as the 80s Mixtaper. Join us next time as we explore the late summer of 1980 in Playlist 12 and the tunes that defined the season. We're introduced to one of the first superstars of the 80s, Adam and the Ants, with Kings of the Wild Frontier. ABBA return with The Winner Takes It All. And we get a surprise entry from Frank Sinatra with the theme from New York, New York. Until then, have a great week, and I'll see you next time on I Completed 80s Music. Take care.